Welcome to Eye Level to High Level, where real talk meets real results. I'm Jimmy Rios, and each week we break down the mindset, money moves, and strategies you need to elevate your life and business. Let's level up. Welcome to the Eye Level to High Level podcast, where real talk meets real results. I'm Jimmy Rios, and each week we're going to break down the mindset, money moves, and strategies that you need to elevate your life and business. Let's level up. Today we are doing our third episode and excited to bring back my CFO, Chris Vail, who is going to be enlightening us with more knowledge and throwing down some great gems of information that I think we'll all appreciate. How you doing, Chris?
I'm good, Jimmy. How are you doing today?
Man, I can't complain. I had a good weekend, ready to rock and roll. So let's get down to it. I know we only have a little bit of time, and you're only going to be doing one show today with us. So let's talk a little bit about credit, and specifically, let's go into ways to make money while unemployed. That's pretty cool. So let's talk about that. Here in the Eye Level to High Level program, where our company was built around getting very creative in utilizing tools that are already out there that have been used for years, but that maybe just in the traditional mindset in financing, they don't get used properly, right? So, we've come up with different strategies. We've developed different pathways to help individuals and business owners to be able to do some of the things that traditionally you wouldn't be able to do. So today we want to talk a little bit about ways to make money while unemployed. Give us some a little bit of color on that, Chris. What are your thoughts about that? Like, so if I'm unemployed, right, and I don't have any money coming in, how do I make money? That seems like it's impossible.
Yeah, well, I mean, first and foremost, it's unfortunate that that would occur. But one thing to keep in mind with technology nowadays, there's so many different ways to create not only additional revenue streams or what people would refer to as side hustles. But nowadays, there's so many people now that are just starting their businesses overall because either they don't want to work for somebody or they want to do it themselves, right? And with technology, number one, I mean, you could literally go to YouTube and type in, side hustles or things like that and find hundreds, if not thousands, of ways that people are generating income and revenue. But as far as eye level to high level is concerned, the one thing that we really focus with our clients is, one thing we're obviously helping them to be able to get funding for their business, but on top of that, we always want to make sure that their money is always working for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing to get money, but okay, fine, you have that money. What do you do with it, right? And the last thing you want is just to have it sit there, right?
Right.
Now, as far as it goes to say with people that are, unfortunately unemployed, and especially now with what's going on with the federal downsizing and things like that, obviously there's a huge number that's been affected to. We still want to be able to help those clients, number one, first and foremost, be able to get that funding, like we talked about in the previous episodes, so that if they choose to start a business themselves or a side hustle or whatever it may be, they're going to be in a position of strength, right? Instead of a
Right.
position of desperation where they're just struggling to survive. So there's lots of, you could count, thousands of different ways to do that. But the one thing that we really focus on is once we're able to get that funding for the client, is utilizing their money to be able to make money, number one, but also being able to help others that aren't as fortunate that would be able to qualify to be able to get in the process themselves. And so ultimately, first and foremost, we're helping the client, and those clients are helping other clients be able to get, funding on their own as well. And it just creates this gigantic, as we mentioned before, this gigantic pay it forward model, right? And the more people that we're able to help, the more people they're able to help, and creates the ripple effect, which just makes everybody in a better position.
Yeah. Now we're going to talk about underwriting guidelines in my next episode. But how would somebody who's unemployed be able to get capital if they don't show any income coming in? What are some thoughts and ideas on how to help an individual in a situation like that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So one of the things that kind of separates Rios than a lot of other companies out there that, will tell you they can get you funding and whether it's personal or business or whatever it may be, is we have an ability to really be creative when it comes to be able to get that funding for the client first and foremost, right? And so whether it could be, say, the strength of their credit, personal credit score can help them to obtain funding. It could be if they did have, let's say, a side business or a business on their own that they were generating revenue for a period of time, we can also help into that. But what really kind of separates us is we're be able to also look at any assets that the clients may have that, again, allows us to tap into it. It may not be as much as they want to get started, but that's all we really need to do. We just need to get started. There doesn't need to be this humongous, pot of money that you have to bring in or whatever it may be, or that we're obtaining it for you. We're very creative in terms of devising a strategy that's built on the individual client and what their goals or needs are. Now, if it's a little bit as opposed to a lot, it may take a longer term to get there, but the end goal is always going to be the same. One, we're going to be able to get the funding that they need in order to put their businesses in a position of strength. But more importantly, we're going to be able to do that without them ever incurring any further debt. And
Right.
and that's also very enormous as well.
Yeah. So let's give some clarity to the client, to the people listening, because we're talking about a system, a program that iLevel to High Level brings to the world that's different. And when I say it's different, it's because traditionally, right, if I'm going to go get a loan, then I have to pay that loan back, right? And
Yep.
I have to, and I might be hesitant to get that loan because if I just lost my job and now I got to leverage and take money, how am I going to pay this money back, right? What assurances and what things are put in place through the iLevel to High Level program to make sure that this is happening the way you're telling me? Because that's a lot of the questions we get asked is like, well, how do
Right.
I know that my debt is going to be covered? And we talk about, taking off the burden of debt. Tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about how that is.
Yeah, and the other, important point that you just mentioned is when they're looking at, what type of loan it may be or how much it's going to cost or how am I going to be able to afford it. And so typically, yes, as you stated, when someone's looking for that funding, right? They're going to be very concerned on what the interest rate is, what the payback is going to be, what the monthly payment is going to be, what the term is, all those factors that will play in to make the decision for them, right? But keep in mind that's normally the end result for that client with whichever company. Now, while we're able to utilize some similar ways that other companies work, it I don't want to say it doesn't matter because it always matters, but where we educate our clients to understand is the rate is one thing, but it's not, it doesn't have to be the lowest rate. It doesn't have to be the smallest term. A lot of times it could be a higher rate. It could be even a higher length of term because ultimately that with our process, all of that's going to be eliminated within about 6 to 12 months anyways. So even if let's say that they were able to obtain, let's say a loan that was, I don't know, 5% interest rate and the term was like 60 months or, whatever it may be, that would seem kind of scary, especially when you're talking about somebody who, is possibly just lost their job and they're looking for funding. But again, it's temporary, right? And what I mean by that is when we factor in all of that, all of the funding that they're able to get, and we build up that strategy with what they're trying to accomplish, we're factoring in what those payments are going to be over a period of time. So while the process is ongoing and we're generating that additional funding for the client, um, all of those payments and everything that still have to be made for that initial funding are already going to be taken out, right? So when we talk about not having to incur any further debt, that's a really important step, especially when we're looking at things like, tapping into potential real estate or things like that. If we're getting a second lien on a house so that they can keep their, their low interest on the first, it's still an additional payment. And then sometimes that's scary because they're like, well, how am I going to come up with this other payment? And again, what kind of separates us is we've already factored that in. So they're not going to have to make any further out-of-pocket expenses than what they already are while it's going through the process, and it's going to generate them that funding very quickly.
Now, there's also ways that we can work with other asset classes. It doesn't have to just be real estate, right? Because maybe not everybody
Right.
has real estate to fall back on. What are some of these other things that we look at that we could potentially put together a plan for if they had these types of assets?
Yeah, and we've obviously, touched base on this in a couple of previous episodes, but really anything that a client has of an asset that we can basically tie and leverage to be able to get funding out of, right? So we mentioned real estate because that's the easiest, right? But like you said, there's a lot of people out there that don't, that don't own their own property, but there's 401ks, there's IRAs, there's stocks and bonds, there's crypto, there's a whole bunch of different asset classes out there that we're able to creatively tap into. Again, it may not be the most amount that they're trying to get out, but also keep in mind, it doesn't have to be just one asset or one type of asset that we're able to leverage, right? Let's say they do own a property. Let's say they do have a 401k or an IRA or life insurance policy or, stocks and bonds or whatever. They can do a combination of those. They can do one and later the other. So the limit is really not on us. The limitation is really on what they decide to bring in. And
Yeah,
whatever they decide to bring us, we always like to say the more information that we know helps us to be able to better create a strategy for the client in the most possible way, in the best way possible. So when we have all that information, okay, there's this asset and there's this asset, maybe we're utilizing the strength of their personal credit score or they have business revenue or something like that. It just doesn't pigeonhole us into just choosing one way to obtain funding for them. We can use multiple ways, which obviously allows, a bigger funding amount for them to get started, which ultimately is going to provide them more funding up front.
now I know that you know interest rates vary, amounts that can be made in this program vary, time frames vary, but give us like just like a case study or something to give us a kind of like a visual of what that looks like if somebody was to come to the high level program. And do you have one that you can come off of your mind that you could think of that where we were able to help them?
Yeah, I mean, obviously every client is different because their
Right.
situation is different, their needs are different, their goals are different. But when we first started this, and we just celebrated our 1 year anniversary with this process, um, from where we were now, or from where we were then to where we are now, we've really evolved, right? And the only way that we've been able to do that is be able to work with each individual client and learn what works for them. What ways can we do better to help clients in the future? And so, in the past, when we first started, right, um, was that first process was to be, to develop that high end line of credit for them, right? And then from there, they would be able to take a portion of that and then put that into the non-recourse investment fund and generate that return, in a very short period of time. And that worked great for clients, and it still does to this day. But what we noticed was how do we shorten that time frame, right? How are we able to maximize the funding for them in a quicker amount of time? And
Right.
so where it's kind of evolved is now we almost have more of a hybrid approach, right? Where while we're working on, say, that high end line of credit, we're also working on that cash on cash return with the non-recourse investment fund. So it
Right.
still obtains the same goal for the client. The difference is the time frame it saves could be multiple months, which is huge, right?
Right.
Especially when you're dealing with clients that may need funding like right away for certain expenses, or they're looking to buy a project or whatever it may be. That time frame is really critical.
Right.
Number one, and then kind of one of the bases of the purpose of this episode today was really to talk about ways that we can help the client's money make more money for them, right? And so one of the ways that we came up with a few months ago was generating a passive income opportunity for them that allows them to generate a very high level of return on investment for really doing nothing but leveraging the money that they already have and essentially becoming a lender, right?
Right.
And so if they're able to take that, for example, if they're able to take that money that they have and they're pledging a portion of that back to us, where we talk about that, always constantly looking at that pay it forward process in our minds, is we're now able to take that money that's being provided to us from the client, and now we're able to help other clients be able to get funding for themselves that normally wouldn't be able to qualify, right?
Right.
Not everybody, as we talked about, owns houses or 401ks or IRAs or whatever, but that still doesn't mean that they should be left out, right?
Right.
And so what this allows is, because we already know that the funding process works, because this is exactly what the client just obtained for their own funding. So all we're doing is we're just basically creating that funding opportunity for the other client, pushing them through the process or getting them started in the process. Once they're able to get funded, they're going to have no problem paying that high end return on investment, because it's better to say, it's better to have, let's say, 75% of something rather than 100% of nothing, right?
Right.
And so to the client who is pledging that line of credit to be able to use, they're not only going to get their line of credit paid back once the new client gets funded, but they're going to get a 25% return on investment. Now,
Wow.
I know there's a lot of investments out there and, other ways to generate money, but I don't know many other uh, programs out there that could generate a 25% return on investment. Number one, for doing nothing, because all they literally have to do is sign a piece of paper, allowing us to be able to use these funds. And number two is they're able to do this multiple times a year. So in reality, it's really not 25% return on investment. If they're doing it twice a year, which is about the average, it really is more of a 50% return on investment, right?
Right.
Because not only are they getting the money back the first time, then they're relending it out and getting that return on investment again. I mean, please,
And that's
let me
just
know.
and that's just
50%.
one side of the equation, right?
Yeah.
Because they're making
Yes.
money also on the program. So the money that they have in the
Right.
program is giving them a monthly. Should they want to take a withdrawal, they can do that, and so now they have
Correct.
basically two income streams, right? And we haven't even talked about what we're doing for their business. So their business,
Right.
this is just income coming in. This is what I traditionally call you the third arm that we build for you. You have two arms that are doing your 9 to 5, your daily grind. But this third arm is coming in as in sweeping and helping stabilize and do the things you need to do. And that other piece of passive income, 25%, that's just money making money,
Right.
save money making money, right? Because that money is being lent back to Rios business advisors so we can help other people. Is that correct?
Yep, correct. Yep, that's absolutely right. And again, those people are going to be more than happy to pay that percentage back,
Right,
because if it wasn't for that opportunity, they'd be left out, right? And we believe that we can ultimately help every small business in America out there with whatever their, funding challenges are, funding needs out there, number one, but then to be able to continue to grow and scale, right?
right,
And that's what's ultimately going to always put their businesses in a position of strength, number one, because when you have that funding as a business, you're making decisions based on value. You're making decisions based on what's going to grow your company, as opposed to if you don't have those opportunities and you're having to make those decisions, you're making them based on desperation, or you're making them based on, okay, this is all I can afford right now, right?
right,
And whereas instead of, for example, let's say that if you purchase this product, it's going to help grow your company, and let's say that cost is $2,000, right? But you only have, you've only made $500 for the month, and that's all you can afford in your budget, and that's while that may help, it's going to take longer to get to that point, right?
right,
If we're able to help get that funding first and foremost for the client, they're going to be able to make those positions of value, which is going to make their company get stronger and be in a position of strength, and obviously ultimately be less likely to have downtimes or failures or things like that. But in addition to that, once you're in the process, it's not just, okay, I've done the process and then I'm done and I got my funding. once you're in, you have the ability to be able to repeat those steps over and over and over again, as long as they're being utilized for, business purposes. We
Right.
don't want, we don't want our clients to think like, okay, yeah, this is a personal piggy bank and I can just generate this money because I'm getting in such a quick amount of time and I can do whatever I want. I can go buy a Lamborghini or whatever it is. That's not the
Right.
point of this.
Yeah.
The point of this is to be able to provide funding for our clients that not only helps put their current business in a financially strong position, but it allows them to scale, allows them to grow, it allows them to open up more businesses that honestly they may never even thought about. But now they have that funding capabilities to be able to do that. And for us, if we're providing this to the client and they're happy, well, ultimately they're going to tell other people. And
Right.
that just helps us to create more clients that way, word of mouth referrals, things like that. And one thing that you mentioned, obviously we talked about the passive income opportunity, but in addition, you also mentioned that they'll have the ability to make monthly withdrawals if they choose to do that, which I'm sure we'll get into the exact processes at a later time throughout the season. But when they're also referring clients, they also are or potential clients, they also have that ability to generate a sizable revenue stream in addition to that as well.
So now you're
So
talking
there's,
about now there's three arms, three separate
yep,
arms of income coming in for this person who originally came with one, I guess, problem, right?
right.
And the need was I'm unemployed and I don't know what to do, right? And here we're coming up already with three valuable passive income potential income streams for them. You mentioned earlier the importance of value. I think value is such a golden word in what we do, right? Because
Yes,
let's be real.
absolutely.
Let's talk about that. Lord, we have there's I don't know how many brokers, mortgage loan officers, insurance agents, real estate. There's tons of these people in our financial services wheelhouse, right? Where we talk about credit, we talk about insurance and mortgages, all these parameters. High level to high level, and Rios Business Advisors does something or other in those worlds, right? In those planets. And we can help our clients in more ways than one, which is dynamic. That's dynamic value coming in to be able to pivot at any situation, look at somebody's needs and say, oh, look, originally, yes, you came to us because you had this problem, but upon looking at it further, and looking at solutions, we uncovered other problems that need to be addressed first, right? Case in
Right.
point, when we talk about credit, right? Credit, I mean, I always say cash is king, but credit is the ace in the hand, right? Because
Yeah.
credit gives you the ability to do so much more. You can stretch that band-aid or the rubber band that much greater than if you just have cash. Plus,
Right.
you limit yourself. If something goes wrong, you expose all your cash. Now you're done, right? So you there's different ways that we can work with people. What other value I guess items does Rios Business Advisors and the eye level to high level program bring to the potential client that's listening out there? What makes us a little bit different than the average Joe out there who has an insurance company or a mortgage company?
Yeah. Well, I mean, is a great question, and let me try to unpack a little bit of that. So one of
Sure.
the things that you mentioned first is, we don't have just one process that we put the client in, right? And we do that for a reason to have the reason we have multiple processes is because there are times when credit needs to be done and there's times when cash needs to be done, right? And as you mentioned, cash is great and you can have a lot of advantages of that, but there's also a lot of times when utilizing other people's money, as we refer to it as in those lines of credit or additional funding, that is also going to benefit you because number one, you're able to use that to your advantage. But number two is you're also keeping your cash in until you really need it for whatever reason it may be, right? And by having both of those at your disposal, again, ultimately our goal is to be able to put the client in the best position of strength as possible. But in terms of other value is not only value in terms of the relationships that we have with our lenders that we work with, but we're also, as we talk about this evolution and how we're growing as we begin to start our second year with this process, is what are the ways that we can uh, continue to provide value to the clients, but do it in a more efficient manner, to do it in a shorter, time frame, and to be able to get them a higher amount of funding that normally we wouldn't be able to do, right? And what I mean by that is we're actually working to be able to have the ability so that we don't need to rely on lenders. We don't need to rely on other brokers or things like that. And it's not that they don't produce. Don't misunderstand me, because some of them are, a lot of them are great that we work with. But there's times where if we have that control and we can control our own decisions, number one, it's going to benefit the client faster. And number two is the more things that we can control with the strategy, the better off the client's going to be, because we're building the strategy for them, right? When
Right.
we're having to rely on third party decisions and third party fundings and things like that, that's out of our control, right? As
Right.
much as we believe this is what's going to happen, something could happen where the amount's lower, or, this isn't going to happen now because of something we didn't know. But when we're able to make our own funding decisions, that not only opens the door to the clientele that we're currently working with, number one, but we talk about being able to help clients who normally wouldn't be able to get funding on their own or be able to enter the process on their own. It just gives another opportunity for us to bring even more in. And the
Right.
more clients we're able to bring in and help them, obviously, the better off everybody's going to be.
That makes a lot of sense. I was seeing on here in my notes why private credit has become sticky for corporations and enterprises. So let's talk a little bit about that. Credit in general. I mean, there's so many changes that are happening in in politics and the government and all these things happening that we can't control, right? But there are certain things that we can control, right? And I know from owning Next Level Credit that in writing this book, Decoding the Mystery of Business Credit, a little shameless plug, but it's our credit building book that we have on Amazon. And we'd look at credit. I think we take credit for granted, to be honest with you. I think and I say this because in America, credit is so easy to get. And and I talk about that because in Colombia, in Medellin, Colombia, where my parents are from, and where we opened our other company there, right? Credit is not something that people are used to getting there. And people
Right.
pay everything with cash, and if you do get credit, it comes at exorbitant rates. An average of about 37% per month. That's a lot, right? You talk about annual percentage rates, and people get scared when they talk hard money, and you get a hard money loan at 12%, that's 1% per month, right? So imagine paying
Yep.
37, right? So in America, we have different types of credit, right? We have personal credit and we have business credit. But from the winds of change of what I've been hearing, especially with what's happening with the SBA, the Small Business Administration, attaining credit in the traditional format, how I think we were used to getting it, is going away. Right?
Yeah.
What have you read or heard about this part of credit with regards to businesses and corporations and enterprises?
Well, and that's a great question. The thing about credit, especially in the United States, is it's really a double-edged sword, right? As you mentioned, it's very easy to get credit. Okay. But at the same time, um, when you get credit and you don't understand how to use it, it can snowball very quickly. And then when that gets out of control and now you're stuck, but you still need to be able to provide services or go out and purchase things. And now you're paying, five, six, seven times the amount that you normally would, whether it's, purchasing a car, that's the easiest example. If you have great credit, you see the low interest rates, you see, the 0% up to, a few percent. But if you have bad credit, you could pay upwards of 20 to 25% on a vehicle. Now, that doesn't seem like a lot because the amount is smaller. But when you add up all those interest payments over a term, a term of like 5 or 6 years, it's literally enough to pay a vehicle 2 or 3 times over, right?
Right.
And the problem is that so many people now, when they first get that credit and they don't really understand the importance of it or how to use it properly, it snowballs, right? And now they have and now they get the credit cards and they max those out, but now they can't afford the payments. Now they have the late 30s and now their score starts plummeting. And the
Right.
problem is once it goes down, it's incredibly hard to go back up,
Yeah.
right? Number one. And number two is even if you're able to, whether our credit, repair company is helping you repair that, whatever it may be, again, those things can be done, but it's really more on the education side to those that need to understand, okay, fine, you're getting a second chance or third or fourth or whatever many chances you are, but you really need to understand why it's important to maintain that certain, level. And it's not just about the score, right? You can have good credit scores, but your utilization may be really high, or you may still have some negative issues, or you may have a lot of inquiries. These are all things that lenders and banks and things like that look at more so than just a credit score. So when
Right.
you hear when you hear out there, oh, if you have a 680 credit score, you can get, $250,000 funding. Yeah, that's really not true because just because you have that score doesn't mean there's other not, mitigating factors that are going to affect that decision. And 9 times out of 10, what you think is going to be positive ends up being negative, right?
Right.
Well, we can't do this because your utilization is too high, or you have this 30-day late, or you have this issue with your report, or, you have too many inquiries and it's going to take us, 3 or 4 months to clean all that. Well, that's great. But what happens when you need the money now,
Right.
right? And so that again, we always go back to that educational understanding of why it's important to not only understand why it's being, why we're not only advising on it, but how it's going to benefit you and put you in a stronger position moving forward.
Mhm.
So, you know, again, as we mentioned earlier, like on the private credit side, right? The hard money lenders, private money lenders. Yes, those interest rates are much, much higher than a typical bank or something like that. Well, there's a reason why. And typically that it means that they're asking for less documentation or they're accepting more of a risk. So they're going to charge a higher interest rate or whatever it may be. But again, if we're utilizing instruments like that, whereas outside of us, that's what you're going to have to end up, owing for that time period. With us, it's just a stepping stone, right? If
Right.
it allows what we need to do to be able to get that funding to get started into the process, that's okay that the interest rate may be higher because again, it's going to be eliminated in such a short amount of time.
Right. Wow. Yeah. You hit on a lot of great points that, I mean, I don't think a lot of people understand. I mean, as things get tighter, we have to start thinking differently. I think we have to start really being more creative and start really listening to what's happening in the markets, right? And I mean, people need to educate themselves. There's a lot of tools now to be able to bring that the ability to look at things a little differently. I mean, when I wrote this book, this book at the time was written to do a process over a course of 2 to 3 years, and now that has changed a lot, right? I mean, I'm probably going to end up having to do the 2.0 version to talk about some of the things that Rios Business Advisors and the high level program is doing, because when we talk about time, yeah, we're in an instant gratification type of society. But when it comes to problems, people need solutions now, right? So it's very hard to tell somebody, well, you need business credit and you're going to have to go get my book and it's going to take you 2 years to get there. But now that we have solutions that can jumpstart you and get you there sooner, I think it's important that they understand that. In a very quick minute, a minute and a half, tell us a little bit about that solution that we put together for people that are looking for business credit.
Yeah. So you're referring to the actual process itself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So one thing quick is, even though the book that you wrote was several years ago, the concepts are still the same.
Right.
The only thing that's changed is the speed,
Right.
right? Which actually benefits clients now. But the fundamental process of why not only business credit is important, but how it's going to benefit you and why you need to focus on that first and foremost, that's never going to change, right?
Right.
But in terms of in terms of the process itself, is again the goal is to be able to provide funding for clients that not only need it, for something right away, but again to have the ability to generate funding over and over and over again to put their companies in a position of strength and scale and grow and things like that. So our process is really, at the beginning, whether we're obtaining that funding for you, whether you're bringing in the funding on your own, whether it's a combination of both. Once we have what that funding is, and we've talked about this in previous episodes, we sit down with you, we advise you through what's called an evaluation of offer spreadsheet. Everything is broken down. We explain the process that we believe, is going to be in your best interest. We break all those numbers down. We show how it's going to work not only in the initial process, but then in phase 2 and beyond, right? And that's really after the first phase of that funding that's being received by the client. Again, whether it's a line of credit, cash on cash return, combination of both. But where the magic really happens is after that, after you let it do it again and again and again, then you really start to see the growth. But again, ultimately, as we keep going back on this, all of this is always done without incurring any further debt to the client.
Nice.
So, they're not making those out-of-pocket payments, whether it's mortgage or credit cards or MCA loans or personal loans or businesses, whatever it may be, because we've already factored all that in, right? And while it may seem scary at first, because again, it's just something new to people, right? And so when everything is explained to them, that light bulb moment is going to go off for everybody. Now,
Right.
that may happen right away. That may happen a week, a month, a year down the road. Whenever it does, and they realize the opportunities in front of them, that's when they're ready to jump on board, right? And this, the beauty of our process is we're not forcing anybody, oh, you have to do this or else, you're going to lose this money or whatever it is. It's on your time. But whenever you're ready to go, we're going to work with you just like we work with everybody else. So you never figure that you're going to be on your own island trying to figure this out,
Right.
which happens everywhere else out there, right? They'll tell you, okay, great, we're going to get you this funding, but then you're expected to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and you have no idea what any of that is, right?
Yeah.
And then if you don't do it, it's not like they're going to, go after you to get it done. If you do it, great. If not, they're moving on to the next client.
Right.
We're with you every step of the way, whether it's a phone call with the lender or whether we're working on you with with the corporation's line of credit or the monthly investment calls, whatever it may be. We're always going to be with you and advising you on what we believe is the best for you. But ultimately, it is going to be your decision. And as long as typically where some of our clients sometimes get in trouble is when they kind of go off the rails. Oh, I think I can do it better on my own, or I'm going to follow this process, somebody else, or whatever it is.
Right.
And then unfortunately they come back to us and say, okay, I'm in trouble. I need your help again. We're never going to turn anybody down, but we might have to have a little bit of constructive criticism in the beginning
Sure.
to get them back on track to understand why, if you follow this process, you're going to succeed because the process is designed not to fail, right?
Right.
As long as you follow the process, you can't fail at it. So
Correct.
I know that's probably a little bit longer than a minute, but
Well, Chris, we talked about value. You bring a ton of value to this company, and obviously, love having you on the show. This is what people need to listen to. But we've come to the end of our show. Thanks for tuning in to the Eye Level to High Level podcast. If you're ready to rise above the average, subscribe, share, and follow us for more ways to take your grind to greatness. Until next time, keep pushing higher. Thanks for tuning in to Eye Level to High Level. If you're ready to rise above the average, subscribe, share, and follow us for more ways to take your grind to greatness. Until next time, keep pushing higher.